This induction explains the health and safety rules for the site. It also gives valuable information about, but not limited to, access to site, welfare facilities, PPE, fire and emergency procedures, accident reporting and first aid provisions. Please inform your induction representative if you have any reading, writing or language difficulties, and other induction arrangements will be made. This induction is for this site only and will be valid for 1 year from the date of issue. A re-induction may be required if there are significant changes within this time. This induction is split into 4 sections. General access and office working, mandatory for all. General plant access, mandatory for all contractors working on site. Outage plant access, mandatory for all working on site during a CDM controlled outage. And permit acceptors, mandatory for all working on site who will be signing to accept a permit to work. Safety in mind. SUEZ operate a behavioural safety scheme where we look at the behavioural aspects towards all persons working on site. We will recognise safe working practices and we expect our staff and contractors to challenge and report unsafe behaviour. No job is so important that we cannot take the time to do it safely. Signing in. All visitors and contractors are required to sign in at the start of their visit and when leaving site. This also applies when leaving at any other time, for example, during lunchtime. The visitor sign-in register is located at reception on the 2nd floor. The contractor sign-in register is located at the ground floor entrance. Entry throughout the site is controlled by an access control system. Visitors will be accompanied throughout their visit. Contractors will be issued a unique pass card. Walkways. The speed limit on site is 10 miles per hour and must be adhered to at all times. Heavy goods vehicles use the traffic routes upon entry and exit. Extra care must be taken. Walkways are provided for your safety and must be used at all times. Use recognised crossing points when crossing internal roadways. Please ensure you wear a high-vis jacket or vest when moving around site and crossing roads. Parking. Please respect our reverse parking policy and park accordingly. Please use the pedestrian routes when crossing the car park. During an outage, parking may be restricted. You will be advised via your CDM brief if this is the case. Disability and health conditions. If you are blind or partially sighted, hearing impaired or mobility impaired, please inform reception to make us fully aware. This will enable us to assist you further and ensure that any additional controls required are put in place. If you have health conditions which could affect you on plant, please inform your SUEZ guide. Conditions could include pacemaker, vertigo, joint pain. Welfare and hygiene. Toilets can be found on the 1st and 2nd floors of the main office block. If you need directions, please do not hesitate to ask. Please use the lift or stairs provided. Disabled toilets can be found on the 1st and 2nd floor. Please ensure that you wash your hands in the facilities provided after visiting the plant. Never handle waste without appropriate PPE. Rummaging in waste or removing any material is strictly forbidden. Please ensure you wash your hands before eating, drinking or smoking. Plant areas. When in these areas, please ensure that you remain vigilant to any hazards displayed and stay with the group at all times. Personal protective equipment, PPE, is required on plant once you have crossed the green PPE line which runs in front of the tipping hall and boiler house. See map on the next slide. The following PPE is mandatory on site: eye protection, high-vis vest jacket, safety gloves, appropriate footwear, hard hat. Visitors and contractors must wear long trousers, no shorts. A long sleeve top with a high-vis vest is allowed. Safety gloves must be carried at all times but do not have to be worn unless carrying out a task. Hearing protection. Hearing protection is mandatory in the turbine hall, within 1 metre of the primary and secondary air fan and the ID fan in the main boiler house during soot blowing. Earplugs are available outside every door leading to the turbine hall and outside the control room on the second floor. Mobile phones. Do not use a mobile phone whilst driving. Do not use mobile phones in operational areas of the site, specifically around vehicles, mobile plant, machinery and equipment. Do not use mobile phones whilst walking around site. If it is necessary to make or take a call whilst on site, ensure you are in a designated safe place before using the phone and stay throughout the duration of the call. Fire. If you notice a fire anywhere on site, raise the alarm by pressing the nearest call point and exit to the building by the nearest exit. Dial 999 or 112. Only fight fires if you are trained to do so. If you hear the fire alarm at any time other than the weekly test time, make your way to the fire assembly point, which is located next to the bicycle shed at the end of the car park. The fire alarm is tested weekly every Thursday between 10 AM and midday. No action is required to be taken during this time. Smoking. Smoking is only permitted in designated areas on site. This includes all cigarettes, e-cigarettes, pipes and other smoking paraphernalia. The designated smoking area is on the south side of the ACC. PPE must be worn in this area. Smoking is not permitted outside the site entrance gates. Violence, bullying, drugs and alcohol. We have a strict policy on the use of drugs and alcohol at work. You will be removed from site if you are found to be under the influence and you may not be allowed back. Violence and bullying will not be tolerated. First aid. This site's first aiders are listed on the posters displayed on notice boards around the facility. Ask a member of staff if you require first aid. Eye wash stations are located around the facility. First aid boxes are available throughout the facility. Do not leave site without reporting an accident. The nearest accident and emergency department is shown here. Defibrillation units are located on plant, one next to the main entrance to the LV switch room and the other in the control room. Do not leave site without reporting an accident or near miss. Accident reporting. An accident is an unplanned event which resulted in an injury, harm or damage. All accidents and incidents must be reported to an employee on site and recorded in the accident book. Certain events must be reported under RIDDOR, where your full cooperation is required. A near miss is an incident that did not result in injury but had potential. We record all near miss incidents, investigate them and put appropriate actions in place to prevent a reoccurrence. Please report all near miss events using the forms provided and hand them to an employee on site. Visitor supervision. You will be escorted and supervised by a SUEZ employee who is familiar with the site at all times. Please follow any instructions given. If you are unsure of anything, please ask. If you will be accompanied at all points during your visit on site, then you do not need to complete the test. You will be required to sit this induction again if you return to site without completing the test. End of induction. If you are not carrying out work on site, then your induction is complete. Please scan the code to complete your test. Thank you for taking the time to complete this induction. If you have any questions, please speak to your SUEZ representative. If you are carrying out work on site or plan to within the next 12 months, then please continue your induction. This section of the induction explains the health and safety rules for those working on site. It will give further information about safe systems of work, confined space entry, hot work, spillages and housekeeping, scaffolding, working at height/falling objects, work equipment, lifting equipment and operations, hazardous areas, our expectations. You will be required to pass a short test at the end of this induction. Please inform your induction representative if you have any reading, writing or language difficulties, and other induction arrangements will be made. This induction is for this site only and will be valid for 1 year from the date of issue. You may need to redo an induction if there are significant changes within this time. No job is so important that we cannot take the time to do it safely. We operate a behavioural safety scheme where we look at the behavioural aspects of all persons working on site. We will recognise safe working practices and we require our staff and contractors to challenge and report unsafe behaviour. As a company, we endorse that safety is at the heart of everything we do and we strive for an open and honest culture. Take 2 task cards will be used before a task begins as a tool to double check that all safety implications have been considered. Life-saving rules. We all want to go home unharmed and with 0 incidents. You can do your bit to keep yourself and others safe by following our rules to live by. Permit to work. A permit to work is required for all contractor work. Permits are available from the shift manager's office. Your permit must be either displayed or available at your place of work. A permit to work will only be issued when a relevant risk assessment and method statement is produced. For certain tasks, certification may be required before a permit is issued. Anyone leaving the site without closing out a relevant permit or not abiding by the controls listed on the permit may be issued with an infringement notice. An infringement notice may stop you from working on our sites in the future. All persons accepting permits on behalf of their team will be required to sit an additional section of this induction. Risk assessments and method statements. All contractor RAMs will be reviewed by our team prior to you starting work. If they are submitted in advance, this will reduce delays to you starting work. Ensure that you have hard copies with you at point of use, fully signed by all your teams. If you need to deviate away from your working method, ensure you contact your host and gain permission to do so. If a deviation of method is required, update your RAMs accordingly. Point of work risk assessment. Point of work, dynamic risk assessment, must be carried out before a task begins, after a permit has been issued. Should be carried out after every change in circumstance. Examples, after a break or another contractor working in the area. Vigi minutes and safety in mind conversations will be conducted on routine safety walk rounds. Site details. Unless specific permission is granted, the following areas are restricted: tipping floor, main office block, workshops, canteen, HV/LV turbine switch rooms, bottom ash recovery facility. This is operated separately by Blue Phoenix. A separate induction is required for access to this facility. The shift manager can be easily identified as they will be wearing a red safety helmet. Contractor access and welfare. Contractors should access the facility via stairwell 2 access door, across the road underneath the main admin building. They will require a pass card to do so. This is issued on the successful completion of this induction. Welfare facilities will be signposted. Contractors are not permitted to use the office block facilities. Please speak to your permit issuer for the location of your facilities. Regular inspections take place on all welfare facilities.
Personal protective equipment. The minimum personal protective equipment, PPE, required is as follows: hard hat, light eye protection, safety footwear, high-vis vest jacket, safety gloves. Visitors and contractors must wear long trousers, no shorts. A long-sleeve top with a high-vis vest is allowed. Additional personal protective equipment may be required depending on your risk assessment and method statement. All abrasive wheel work requires a full face visor.
Confined space entry and requirements. All entry to confined spaces will be controlled under a permit to work. A risk assessment and method statement must be produced and followed. These will form part of a safe system of work. Welding and oxy-fuel cutting will require ventilation. All persons must have had confined space awareness training as a minimum. The atmosphere must be tested before entering the confined space. This will be carried out by a SUEZ authorised person. Do not enter a confined space without an initial gas reading being taken. When entering confined spaces, ensure that you are signed in and follow the site entry procedures. If there is no sign-in point at the point of entry, do not enter. Hot work. Hot work fire precautions. A fire watcher must be in place for all hot work activities where there is a risk of fire and for 30 minutes following the completion of the work. There must be a sufficient number of adequate fire extinguishers nearby. You must be adequately trained to use these. Fire blankets must be used to provide protection where there are persons working below. Only oxypropane cylinders will be allowed on site. Welding. Welding screens must be positioned in suitable places to protect pedestrians and other workers. Adequate ventilation of fumes must be arranged. Any other requirements indicated by your permit must be followed. Spillages. If a spillage occurs, isolate the source if it is safe to do so. Cordon off the area and, if possible, contain using the spill kits provided. Try to prevent the liquid entering drains. Only tackle spillages of known substances. Use the information from the COSH safety data sheets. Inform a member of staff immediately. Spill kits are located around the site in yellow, white and blue bins and are labelled. Do not use these to dispose of waste materials. Housekeeping. All work areas and welfare facilities are to be kept clean and tidy. Clean your work area frequently throughout the day. Workplace inspections will be carried out to ensure your workplace does not have a build-up of housekeeping materials. Pedestrian walkways are to be kept free of debris, equipment and other objects. Dispose of your waste materials frequently and in accordance with any substance safety data sheets. Food and drink are only to be consumed in the welfare areas provided. Do not dispose of any substances down drains. Scaffolding. Scaffold requirements. Please inform the Permit Office of any access or work at height needs. Scaffold modifications are only permitted by qualified and authorised persons. Never take it upon yourself to modify or remove scaffolding. When entering scaffold, always ensure that there is a valid scaff tag in place. Scaffolding is inspected every 7 days. If there is a do not use scaff tag or an out of date tag, report this to the Permit Office and do not use. Falling objects and working at height. All work at height must be planned. Ladders are only to be used for access, for short durations and very light work. MUPE operators must have proof of competency. When dismantling equipment, all items that have a potential to fall below must be secured. All tooling and equipment should be secured with lanyards or other devices. Store nuts and bolts away from ledges and in appropriate containers. Cover Kennedy grating with material to stop items falling through. Cordon off the area below with barriers and signs. Work equipment. All tools and equipment are to be checked before starting work. All mains power tools are to operate from 110 volts. All electrical equipment must have a valid PAT sticker on display. All cables are to be routed away from walkways to prevent trips. Equipment must only be used by those that are trained to do so and who hold relevant certificates, which must be presented before a permit to work is issued. Whip checks must be fitted to compressed air lines. Lifting equipment and operations. All lifting equipment must be examined by a competent person in line with the lifting operations lifting equipment regulations. Lifting equipment must be inspected before each use. All lifting operations must be planned and supervised by a competent person. Pendant crane controls will only be available to those that have been adequately trained. Slingers and riggers must be adequately trained. Proof of training must be provided when requested. Hazardous areas. Control of substances hazardous to health. Chemical tanks on site contain urea and lime. Dangerous substance explosive atmospheres. Where there is pulverised activated carbon, this area is hazardous due to the combustible nature of the product. Additional work equipment and relevant training will be required for work within these areas and any other areas where you see the X sign. COSH. Prior to bringing any chemical on site, we must ensure that it is on our approved chemical list. Please notify the SUEZ host. All chemicals must be accompanied by the relevant safety data sheets. Users must wear appropriate PPE when handling materials. Materials to be stored safely. Large chemical containers are to be stored on portable buns. Disposal of chemicals is to be carried out via the hazardous waste route. No disposal of chemicals into the drainage system. Site hazards. Whilst care is taken to eliminate or reduce hazards, please be aware that hazards may be present on site. These include, but are not limited to, working at height, confined space, vehicle movements, slippery surfaces, hot surfaces, electricity, remotely operated plant, chemicals, flammable liquids, desire zones, fumes, noise, lifting operations. Our expectations. Everyone must take time to familiarise themselves with the site, be fully trained to carry out their duties, adhere to control methods within the risk assessments and method statements, follow their permit to work conditions, cooperate with the site and emergency procedures, support good safety behaviour, make us aware of any shortcomings with regards to health and safety procedures or arrangements, not intentionally, recklessly interfere with or misuse equipment provided in the interest of health and safety arrangements. Take reasonable care for the health and safety of himself and others who may be affected by their acts or omissions at work. If you are unsure about anything, ask for help. Notice of infringement. If you receive a notice of infringement, this may result in you being banned from the Suffolk EfW and other SUEZ sites. A notice of infringement can be issued for any of the following non-exhaustive list of violations: leaving the site without surrendering or suspending a permit, failure to abide by the controls listed in the permit, failure to carry out a point of work risk assessment prior to a task as requested by the senior authorised person, modifying any scaffold without authorisation or sufficient qualifications, being found to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol whilst on the site, acting in an aggressive or violent manner while on site, entering a confined space without a permit, failure to comply with any site rules. Useful numbers. You may wish to note some of the useful contact numbers shown here. End of induction. If you do not plan to carry out work during a planned CDM outage, then your induction is complete. If you will be completing work during an outage or taking out a permit, then please continue. Please scan the code to complete your test or complete the handwritten test given to you by your SUEZ representative. Full marks are required to gain access to site. Thank you for taking the time to complete this induction. If you have any questions, please speak to your SUEZ representative. What is a permit to work? A permit to work system is a formal recorded process used to control work which is identified as potentially hazardous. It is also a means of communication between site management and those carrying out hazardous work. SUEZ requires that all contractor work to be controlled using the permit to work system. As the person who will be accepting the permit on behalf of your working party, we must ensure that you understand your responsibilities.
You must not sign on to another contractor's permit if you are carrying out any works. To obtain a permit, you will need to present risk assessments, method statements, certifications, and relevant competencies. Following this presentation, you will be required to complete a test of which you will need to score 100%. Permit to work acceptor responsibilities. As a permit acceptor, you will be accepting responsibility to ensure that the work is being carried out in a safe manner and complying with the conditions in the permit to work. The permit acceptor is responsible for ensuring their working party fully understand the working conditions, precautions, limitations, identified hazards, and controls within the permit. This must be delivered and recorded as a toolbox talk to your working party and can be signed off as complete on the working party register. You will be responsible for ensuring your working party abide by the permit conditions at all times by providing adequate supervision. A copy of the permit must be displayed and be readily available at all times. Regular workplace inspections take place to ensure permit conditions are being met. If the conditions of the permit to work change at any time, the work must stop and be made safe. The permit acceptor will need to inform the permit issuer immediately about the changes that have occurred which are not detailed or controlled on the permit. Confined space permits. A confined space permit will be issued for all confined spaces. These permits can be suspended up to 5 times. An initial gas test must be taken by SUEZ personnel before first entry of the day. All entries into the confined space must be logged. Personal gas monitors must be worn by those in the confined space. Regular gas check must be made and recorded in line with the permit. Working party responsibilities. Sign on to the working party register for every day the work is being carried out. Ensure housekeeping is kept to an acceptable standard in the workplace and all rubbish is appropriately disposed of. Abide by the site rules and behave in a safe manner at all times. Permit to work cancellation or suspension. The permit acceptor should check the area to ensure that the work has been completed. They must ensure that all tools, equipment and materials are withdrawn and that the area is left in a safe condition and fit for use at the end of each permit period. The work must not exceed the expiry date or time stated on the permit. You must not leave site with the permit to work still open. Suspend the permit with the issuer if the task or work activity is not complete. If you are unsure about anything, please ask. End of induction. Please scan the code to complete your test or complete the handwritten test given to you by your SUEZ representative. Full marks are required to gain access to site. Thank you for taking the time to complete this induction. If you have any questions, please speak to your SUEZ representative. Construction, Design and Management Regulations. Outage projects at Suffolk fall under the scope of the CDM regulations. CDM applies where any work is being undertaken that is defined as construction under the regulations. This means that the project is notifiable to the Health and Safety Executive via F10. This section will explain the specific health and safety rules for the site during a CDM outage. All the other previous rules stated apply unless superseded by this induction. Signing in and fire procedures. In order to ease roll calls during a fire drill, each company has an individual signing in sheet on a clipboard. Find your company's clipboard and sign in on this. If your company doesn't have a clipboard, please use the general clipboard provided. Contracts manager or the designated deputy must retrieve the signing in sheet from stairwell 1 in the event of a fire and inform the SUEZ muster point coordinator that their staff are being accounted for. Welfare facilities. Welfare facilities are located in the contractor's compound. The designated smoking area is on the south side of the ACC. Full PP must be worn in this area. Cigarettes and e-cigarettes can only be smoked in these areas. Random alcohol and drug testing takes place at this site. Ground floor, vehicle movements and barriers. All vehicle movements on the ground floor must be conducted out using a trained banksman/reversing assistant. If no one is trained, please request and wait for assistance from SUEZ personnel.
All SUEZ sites impose a 5-metre rule in which vehicles and pedestrians are segregated to reduce the risk of injury. In certain circumstances, you may need to be in close proximity to the vehicle and, in this case, an SSW must be implemented. This can be carried out by gaining the operation's attention, the operator giving you clearance to enter his workspace, removing keys from the ignition and placing his hands off the steering wheel, thereby rendering the vehicle powerless. Barrier control signs must be used for all temporary barriers. These are available from the Permit Office. Permit to work. A permit to work is required for all contractor work, including site establishment. Permits are available from the Permit Office, which is located in the contractor compound during a CDM outage. In order to minimise waiting times and to maintain social distancing, permits must be collected at the agreed time between SUEZ and your company. If this time is not practical, a new time should be arranged the day before the senior authorised person. Failure to collect your permit at the agreed time may result in delays to your work, for which SUEZ bear no responsibility. Confined space rescue. We will provide a rescue team during CDM outages. They will be available every day when medium/high risk confined space entries are happening 24/7 or as and when required. The rescue team's names will be displayed in the Permit Office. If you require the rescue team, contact the control room on channel 16. End of induction. If you will not be acting as a permit acceptor, then your induction is complete. If you will be taking out a permit, then please continue. Please scan the code to complete your test or complete the handwritten test given to you by your SUEZ representative. Full marks are required to gain access to site. Thank you for taking the time to complete this induction. If you have any questions, please speak to your SUEZ representative.